Welcome to In the News for May the 6th, 2022. I am Brett Burney from appsandlaw.com.
This is Jeff Richardson from iPhone JD, episode number 50, Brett. Wow.
50. Happy 50th anniversary, Jeff. You know,
I like the gold
many
behind
more.
You for the gold anniversary.
Thank you. I had to represent 50 episodes. We have been doing this now for almost a year, probably actually, I guess a year. I know we've had to miss one or two episodes, but it feels like too much, Jeff. I'm so happy. And this is so much fun every Friday. And I'm so thankful that you are willing to sit here and continue your In the News blog post so that we have something to talk about every Friday morning, which I wouldn't worry about much anyway, but it's just so fun. Lots of good stuff this past week. I mean, not to mention, this is May 6th. So we had Cinco de Mayo yesterday. Then, of course, you know, for us on the techie nerdy spectrum, we had May the 4th be with you. So that was always fun, right? And we'll come back around to that. But why don't we talk passwords right off the bat? How about a fun, happy-go-lucky topic for a Friday morning? Although this is always something important, and it is always something that you and I enjoy talking about to a lot of our fellow colleagues about the importance, not just of thinking through your password and even what I call the password strategy, right? But also even password management apps. We can talk about 1Password, but you started off your post this morning, Jeff, with a fantastic paragraph here. Talking about, I call it Fido, F-I-D-O. So I keep thinking of like the dogs, and my passwords are going to the dogs. But why don't you explain it? And then we've got several things we can talk about on the password side this morning.
Yeah, I did not realize that yesterday, in addition to being Cinco de Mayo, was World Password Day. I should have celebrated appropriately. Yes, it's for those who celebrate. But it was a nice time for Apple and a bunch of others to announce what they have been doing for a while now on this new initiative. You know, passwords are such a problem because you need to remember them. And most people don't use a password manager, so they repeat their passwords across multiple websites. So when one website gets hacked, then that password is in the open and people try to use their password on other websites. There's phishing incidents that happen all the time where people are being tricked into providing their password, and the bad guys use it to do all sorts of nefarious things. Passwords are just a serious problem. They really are. It's a real problem. And when I first heard a long time ago about moving towards not having passwords at all, my initial thought was, well, I mean, I agree that passwords suck, but like, how is that going to work? How are you going to not have them at all? But what they're doing, it does actually seem to make sense. It is based on a public-private key technology, which has been around since, I remember when I started practicing law in the 90s, this was a new thing called PGP, which Phil Zimmerman developed. And the idea was that everybody had a private key, and by a key, it's just like a long string of numbers and letters, and then a public key. And I remember the earliest implementations of it in the 90s would be used for email. Like I would send you an email and you would say, gosh, I wonder if this email really came from Jeff. Well, the way that you could tell is I would tell everybody in the world my public key. I could post it on my website, early websites back then. I could, give it to you otherwise. And then you would run a special program that would compare the public key to my private key, which only I would know, and it would sort of come back to it. And the private key would do a match and say, yes, this is indeed me. And it's incredibly mathematically complicated, but it's a way to authenticate with the other person, not having to worry about, them having your password in their database and they have to keep it private and stuff. They can just keep, the public keys. And so that technology has changed a lot over the decades. And this is the basis of what they're using with Fido. And so the idea of how it would be implemented, what they announced yesterday, is that you would have, we're always using our iPhone right now of authenticating, sometimes if you use a two-factor authentication system, like an app, like a specific app, like I use it 1Password, or you may have Authy or an app like that. You'll have a situation where you go to log into a website and the first thing you do is type in your password. And then the second thing is your phone will say, hey, I see that you're logging into Amazon.com. Is this really you? And you'll authenticate it. And that's great because that way, if a bad guy has your password and is trying to log in from Russia or something like that, you'll see it in your phone. Like, no, I'm not going to authenticate that because that's me. But the idea with Fido is it sort of eliminates the first of the two factors. There's no password. And the second factor, instead of being just the authentication that is used today, everything is in that sort of second factor, because since it's using the public and the private key technology, it's incredibly secure. And the idea is that you could use, unlike right now, where you might use different second factor authentication programs for different websites. In this future, with the FIDO Alliance, it will just be a single identity that you'll use across all websites, which means, of course, that you need to get buy-in from a lot of people in the industry. But as you can see from the people listed here, they appear to have all the big players, the financial players like, credit cards, American Express, Visa, MasterCard, Microsoft, Google, you name it, they're all there. So
and the chip makers,
and chip
like
makers,
you have to, exactly, like you said,
it's
a whole wide gamut. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it would have to be built into your browser. It would be built into there's a lot that has to work for this to happen, but these are the players to do it. And so wouldn't it be great that in the future, when you go to log into any website, you just use your smartphone, or you could use other things besides a smartphone, but that's one that I think most people would use to say, oh yeah, this is me logging in. And that's it. You don't have to remember passwords. You don't have to deal with people that forget their passwords or reuse passwords. Sites don't have to keep track of your passwords and risk losing it. I think it makes a whole lot of sense.
Absolutely. And I'll just tell you, it makes me think. Last week, as you know, my family and I, we were in Philadelphia, and I know this isn't exactly it, but it's sort of, I think it's on that trajectory of this world that we're envisioning. Instead of like whipping out my physical credit card, I just used my iPhone everywhere to like buy coffee, to buy meals. I almost got to the point where I was annoyed if I didn't have that capability. But the idea was I used my phone and it authenticated with my Face ID, and I just tapped it to the cash register. Again, I know that's a little bit different, or more simplified than what we're talking about, but I didn't have to like sign anything. I didn't have to like verify that this was who I was. I didn't have to like show the physical credit card with my signature on the back. Like that's going to really, determine that that's who I am. In other words, everything authenticated for me, and it was just so much more seamless. And again, I trusted it more because it was on my phone, and it authenticated me with, of course, Face ID. Again, I know what we're talking about here is a little further down the lane.
Not really. No, I think it is the same.
But it's getting there, right? It's getting there.
It's just like the ease of use of Apple Pay, that you can just put your phone against the terminal and you've paid. Right. It's the same thing. It's just that ease of use where you just use Face ID or Touch ID to authenticate yourself, and you use it for logging in, just like you'd use for paying. I have a lot of questions about the details, and super smart people are working on this, so they have surely thought through this. Things like what happens if you lose your phone, so you need to have a second way to do it, or when you get a new phone, when you transfer from one to the other. So there's lots of details to be worked out, but I've already seen some preliminary things on how they do this, and obviously once the technology becomes available, it's going to only work if you'll probably have to have phones that are updated for this. And, it'll take a while before we can truly get rid of all of our passwords. People that are using older computers, it's not going to work with. So it will certainly be a slow transition, but I am so ready to start. And I was thrilled when I saw this article that was in The Verge suggests that, the earliest implementations might be only a year away, maybe even the end of this year. But that's fantastic. Apple discussed this a year ago when they had their worldwide developer conference in June of 2021, and they talked a little bit about what was coming, but it was just sort of a proof of concept, and it was the sort of thing that we're like, okay, well, this 5 years away, what is this? But now it looks like they're really getting close. And one of the questions I have is the level of security, because two-factor authentication seems pretty good, because two-factor authentication can be problematic when your second factor is a text message being sent to you, because there are ways that bad guys could spoof your phone. But if you use a app for the second factor, like Authy or 1Password or something
Duo,
like that, any of those, then it's got a pretty high level of security. But it's still not using the sort of PGP-based public-private key. I'm curious. My hope is that, and I'm sure they wouldn't be doing this otherwise, my hope is that as simple as this seems, it still has all the security that you would get if you were doing things correctly with two-factor authentication. Now, I have no doubt that overall, it is absolutely most secure, because most people don't use two-factor authentication, or if they do use it, they're using it with their cell phone, which has problems and has been hacked. And there have been examples of that in the press in the past. And so many people, just use the same password over and over again for every single site. So, from an overall level of society, it will clearly be better to move people towards this, because you will up the security level of the people that aren't doing the best. But I am worried that for those people who try right now to use the best type of two-factor authentication, I hope it's at least, as secure. And I actually think it will be, perhaps even more. But I mention all of this because usually whenever you're talking about security, there's this trade-off between ease of use and security.
Absolutely.
And the easier it is to
security.
use,
yes,
the more convenient it is, you're giving up some security. But
that's right.
Could this truly be the holy grail of, really convenient and really secure? Wow, that's fantastic.
Well, in one of these stories, one from The Verge you linked to, and one from Wired, it did say that the paper is still conceptual, right? It's not technical right now. Like you said, there's a lot of questions, but people are working on it. In this Wired article that you linked to, Jeff, you mentioned Apple announced this last year at their developers conference. And let me just ask you, I know both you and I are huge fans of 1Password. Not a sponsor yet. Hey, AgID, let's give it a call. But we love 1Password, and both you and I have been using this for a long, long time, and even with our family, and even we talk about with firms. But one of the things in this Wired article is Apple last year also announced this passkey and iCloud keychain. And again, I feel like that this is another step in this evolution. And I've even run into some folks, Jeff, that they love the iCloud keychain, which, by the way, is much more comprehensive than just passwords. But now that it's improving, or Apple's improving that, people would rather use that than something like 1Password. And to some extent, I think some people say, well, it's built in, right? When I click into a password box in my Safari, whether I'm on the iPad or iPhone or the Mac, and it comes up, that's the first one that comes up. Now, you and I switch over to 1Password, but I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that. I mean, Apple's already doing a pretty good job of protecting that, in the iCloud keychain, that's all protected, right? Apple has no access to that right now. And it is even, I tell people, hey, that's better than nothing. I still prefer 1Password, but using the iCloud keychain and the passwords in there, that just sounds like, again, that's another great step that Apple is making.
Yeah, what Apple announced last year was its version of FIDO, but because we didn't see the big picture, I didn't really understand it at the time what was going on. This Wired article actually came out from about 2 months ago. It was just this week. I mean, of course, they wanted to announce something on World Password Day, to a certain degree, it's just PR. But I actually think that looking at the press release that came out from FIDO, and there's also one on Apple's website that I was reading all this last night, I do actually think that they are announcing something real, that, the different companies that have their own solutions have come together and figured out a way to make it all work together. So it sounds like we're moving beyond the white paper, as you said before, they're just theoretical, and we're moving into something that they actually have a plan for how it can be implemented. You mentioned 1Password and other password managers. In theory, when we get to this future of having no passwords, then a password manager will be unnecessary. And so we won't be using 1Password. Now, the reality is that because there's going to be a transition time that'll probably be long, I think that we'll be in even if this is as good as they say it is, we'll be in a hybrid world for a while. Plus, there's other advantages of a password manager too. I mean, I use 1Password mostly for managing my passwords, but I put all sorts of,
lots of other stuff.
Consider, everything from passport information to driver's license to medical information to secure notes and everything else. That the idea of that product of a secure place to keep things, I suspect I'll have forever. But in reality, 1Password would become less necessary in this FIDO world. But again, I'm excited that they're finally getting their act together, is what they're saying, and I can't wait to figure out all these details because I know they've thought about them, and I'm just curious to see how it works. But gosh, wouldn't it be great if we didn't have to worry? Because I mean, not only is it convenience for us, but as one of these articles mentioned, and I quoted this in the post, you would be literally eliminating phishing. That would just go away, and you would go a long way towards stopping, not completely, but a lot of the a lot of people taking over the ransomware and taking over their systems and stuff like that by upping everybody's level of security in a way that folks could handle it, even if they're not very tech conscious, they're very tech savvy rather. I really think you could vastly improve a lot of the security of our technology. And it is so needed because every day I read another article about a law firm or another company that is, I just heard one the other day that, being subject of ransomware or having a phishing attack or something like that. We've got to come to an end of this. It's just getting ridiculous. So it's
speaking of which, you had another link in here. If you know, I know we're beating the password horse to death, but if you're still not convinced, here is a great story that Jeff linked to today from somebody that's been writing about technology for decades, Adam over at Tidbits. This is a fantastic story to give you a more realistic idea of some of the things that, Jeff, you just mentioned, right? The phishing attacks or people taking over email accounts. And I will tell you, just in the past week, I've had 2 emails from people that I knew, which is why this story was so appropriate and relatable to me. I got emails from people that I knew, but there was just something a little odd about him, Jeff. Like, okay, I haven't heard from this person in a long time. Why is he reaching out now? Or why is this person asking for, you know, an Amazon gift card, which is the example that even Adam uses in here. This is a fantastic story that I will definitely link to in the show notes. And please read through this, because this will give you a good, practical, realistic idea of some of the things that we're talking about, right? And I think some of the things that even FIDO and even password managers will help you to alleviate. This was just a really good story here from Adam.
Yeah, and these things happen literally every day, and it's the phishers again. It's the PH, not F, PH phishers. Right. They find out your password, whether because you're using the same one in multiple places, or they get it some other way. They get into your email account, which is often easy to get if you just have someone's username and password, and the username is just email address, so that's easily available.
That's right.
And then they reach out to everybody in your contacts book, and they send a message, trying to engage you in a conversation, then eventually find some way to scam you into giving them money, whether it's buying a gift card or something like that. And I hear about this happening all the time. And the PSA, we often have PSAs in our show, is anytime you receive an email, unfortunately, you just need to be a little suspicious.
Raises a flag.
Yeah. Did this really come from them? Is this the have I heard from this person? Is it strange that they're reaching out to me? Is this the sort of thing that I expect them to be asking me? We've had things in the past where, not that they broke into my law firm or anything like that, but they spoofed the address of our managing partner and sent an email to a bunch of people in my law firm saying, hey, I'm so-and-so, the managing partner. I have this situation that I need this, it just sounds so silly to even say it out loud, but I need these Apple, App Store gift cards. And if you can buy it, I'll pay you back. And it just sounds so fishy with an F, that you're like, well, who could possibly fall for this? But sometimes people that are just trying to do the right thing, and I'm not saying that happened at my firm, thank goodness, but someone's going to fall for it. They send it out to 1,000 people, and all you need is a couple of them to fall for it, and then you've made some money. Jeff. So it's a serious problem, and if we can get better password security to get past this stage, thank goodness. Hopefully one day we will be talking about this in the same context that we talk about, stagecoach robberies. It's like, that.
Good. I like that. I like that.
So we shall see.
Well, again, that's why this article from Adam is so great. He even has screenshots of the email, and he goes through that there was a gentleman that was a runner from a nearby city. They've worked together in the past, and he got this email from this runner, and it basically, it was very, generic, like, hey, hope you're doing okay. Can I ask you a little favor? Well, this was somebody he knew from the past, right,
so
Jeff?
Of course, so he's like, respond to that.
Yeah, he's like, hey, yeah, sure. What's going on? I haven't talked to you in a long time. And what was the favor? The next email that he puts in here was, hey, do you have an Amazon account? And at that point, Adam, of course,
puts red flags
again, the little antenna goes up. If anything just tingles, if you got that spidey sense tingling happening there, then listen to it. Because that's exactly what Adam did. And he knew, and then what he reached out to this gentleman through a completely different avenue, right? I think he called him or something else, or text messaged him. But what Adam does, of course, because he's a great writer, is he keeps the conversation going with the scammer, basically so that we have the benefit of seeing how that all went down. And let me just add another thing real quick when it comes to even the two-factor authentication. I always tell this story because I think it helps people understand it a little bit even more. Do you remember several years ago, Sarah Palin's email account got hacked, and it turned out to be a college student, and the way that he quote hacked. And I'm using air quotes here because this is really what he did. He was a college student that knew that Sarah Palin, it was, I don't know what the exact email address was, but it was at yahoo.com. So what did he do? He went to yahoo.com and he knew the email address of Sarah Palin, right? Like you said, that's the username. And he tried logging in, and all he did was he said, forgot password, right? So that takes you to that screen where you would put in, and it turned out that one of the questions was, where did you meet your spouse? Well, Sarah Palin is a public figure. Everybody knew that she met her husband in high school. So that's the way he, quote, hacked into Sarah Palin's account. He just said, we met at this school. I mean, he may have tried 2 or 3 different things. I don't know all the exact details, but you all get the picture now, right? That's all he did. That's how he got control of Sarah Palin. It wasn't like he was sitting in some, dark, dank basement somewhere with multiple screens around and trying to guess at multiple passwords. All he did was he went in and he said, forgot password, and he answered the security question. Now, to Yahoo's credit, they have upgraded the security on their system since then. But that was it. And the point that I'm trying to say is that's how he was able to see all those emails. But if he wanted to, Jeff, at that point, he had full access to Sarah Palin's account. He could have sent emails, just like you commented. He could have sent emails as Sarah Palin. Now, I think he chose not to do that.
Yeah,
exactly. Okay.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah. Anyway, you can just tell I get passionate about this because those are the things, we think that we're protected even with those security questions. But anyway, to bring this all back around to where we were in the beginning, happy Password Day, which was yesterday, International Password Day. And right now, before the FIDO system comes on board, I think, Jeff, I don't want to speak for you, but I would say our recommendation is definitely get some kind of a password manager. And I would even say 1Password. And at the end of this article from Adam, he gives some fantastic bullet points here. I don't use a password manager because it creates a better password for me. I use a password manager mainly, Jeff, because I know that I need a specific crazy secure password for every single account that I use. And I can't remember them all. Yeah. And that's what a password manager does for me. Because if I know that my AT&T account gets compromised somehow, I don't have to remember what password I use there. I just go and I use 1Password to say, generate another crazy long password for me and change it, because that's exactly one of the things that Adam's suggesting here, that if this happens to you, this story that he's going through, the first thing you got to do is get that password changed. And don't change back to one of the 3 passwords that you probably already have been using, right? For years and years and years, because we know that's what people are doing. All right. Have we really, really beat this dead horse now? But it's so important. I keep saying horse, by the way, because this is a great article. If in fact, even Adam links to it here. This was a very famous cartoon from several years ago, Jeff. I'm sure you've seen it, right? Yeah. That use a phrase like correct horse battery staple. Random words, but that's a very powerful password. Now, that could be the 1Password you use to access 1Password, but don't use that same password in other places. Yeah. All right. Are we done now?
Yeah. Put a link to that in the show notes. That xkcd is always very funny.
I know.
Cartoons. Yeah.
And this is a very famous little cartoon here, and it just kind of helps you to understand what some of the password components are. All right. Let's get off passwords then. And let's go to something else quickly. I'm on AT&T. I think you're on AT&T. You're Verizon. Yes. Oh, you're AT&T. Okay. So I will tell you this. About a year ago, my family and I were actually traveling. We had to go to Texas for my family. But on the way, I knew we were going to be out, motoring around for a while. And so I switched our current AT&T plans, which I think at the time had 5 gigabytes of data. We switched to an unlimited plan. And I got to tell you, I have been very thrilled with that. It's cost a little bit more money, but not too much. And it's been absolutely worthwhile. And in fact, I was able to get my wife and I on the higher end tier, which gives us access to HBO Max, which I didn't think we would use a lot, Jeff, but through your recommendations on some shows and stuff. And I've been watching Dune over and over and over as well. I mean, it's just been great to have access to that. But it has been really nice, Jeff, to know that I have unlimited data on AT&T and that I can use that as a hotspot as well. That's what that higher end tier does, right? And for the kids, I did a little bit lower end tier. They don't need as much, all of those bells and whistles on there. But I'm glad that I did that a year ago, because if I had waited until now, Jeff, you linked to a story today that AT&T would pretty much kind of be strongly encouraging me to go to the unlimited data if I still had an old plan.
Yeah, they're raising the prices on their older plans to give people a financial incentive to move on to the newer plans. My story is similar to yours, Brett. Years ago, I was in Orlando, Florida. We were taking the kids to the Universal theme parks, and we used a lot of data that month. And under one of what at the time had been a regular AT&T plan, I had these overage charges, which were so crazy. I'm like, oh, we got to get away from this. And so I'm like, look, we need to sign up for an unlimited data plan. And nowadays, that is the norm, and that makes sense. I mean, I think for a lot of folks, having an unlimited data plan is the way to go, so that you don't have to worry about it. But AT&T is using the carrot is that it's great to have unlimited data. The stick is, if you're still in an older plan, now they're going to make you pay more money. So perhaps not surprising, but something to keep in mind if you haven't made the switch yet.
The other thing, it feels like it's full circle, Jeff. I remember years ago, I had unlimited plans, and I would talk to a lot of people that had unlimited plans, and they would not give those plans up. They were grandfathered in, right? And they had unlimited plans. And I forget why a lot of the carriers switched away from unlimited
when 3G
plans.
came out.
Right.
They were worried that was probably going to be too expensive for them. So they pushed people towards the tiered plans so that they could manage the data. But now their networks are, I guess, secure enough, or robust enough rather, that they can handle the data. And so they say, let's just get everybody on unlimited plans. So.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so if you're on AT&T, just be warned. You're going to either be paying more for the current plan that you have, or you're going to be paying more for the unlimited plan that they're probably going to make you go into. Another quick link you had, which I thought was great. We've talked about this, although I hope that this price is still good. Jeff, you and I have talked about AirTags in multiple different ways. And I have seen that they're usually about $99, right? I think it's $100 for a pack of 4 AirTags.
Right.
But now, I think I did it on Amazon. Looks like, I don't know if that...
Did they go back up to 95?
They may have gone up. Yeah. But I will tell you, if you do a search, I think even my wife was telling me today, she saw a Best Buy link for $85. That was what you were linking to today. Yeah, so Apple just be aware, the price may have fluctuated a little bit, but you might be able to find a 4-pack for around $85, depending on the store.
Which is a great price. And I saw, although I linked to Amazon in my post, like you said, I heard that other stores are doing the same thing, which makes me think that Apple must have done something to allow a lot of third-party retailers to, maybe get a little bit more cushion in there that they could bring the price. So you can definitely find a 4-pack for $85 right now. It's interesting that AirTags came out, I see around, I posted my review of May of 2021. So it's been, I guess, about a year that they've been out. And sure enough, Apple says that the batteries that are in them should last about a year. And of the 4 that I've been using for the past year, the one that I attached to my luggage, I noticed just the other day that I get an alert saying it's time to replace the batteries. So I literally just
interesting
from Amazon some of those CR2032 batteries to update it. But it's interesting to me that from the battery standpoint, the one on my luggage, the battery went down the first. But I also have one like on my keychain, for example. And you would think that with my keychain being with me all the time, that this is the one that actually has the most battery power. I don't know what it is that dares down the battery. Maybe because the luggage is sometimes in an airport where there's tons of other iPhones around and it's making all these connections. Maybe that's what brings but anyway, suffice it to say, you should get at least and probably more than a year on the battery. And then it's simple just to replace the battery. And those batteries are really cheap.
I might have to pull the trigger. I still don't have them. Yeah, this is still good. In fact, I was just listening to a podcast. I think it was last week's Mac Break Weekly. They were talking about a gentleman on a plane. The plane lost their luggage, but he was able to email or text the aircraft. Did you hear that? Yeah. The airline to say, well, we found the luggage. Here it is. I'll give you a picture, the geolocation where the luggage is. Please get that to me now. And I think there was another bag that they had delivered to a wrong location. And the airline was telling them, we delivered it. He's like, no, you delivered it, but to the wrong address. So I was telling my wife, that's why you might want to consider getting an AirTag. She was like, I don't know if I have any use for this. And I'm like, oh, well, honey, let me tell you. Let me tell you what you could do. All right, let's get to a couple of fun videos. I'm so happy that you leaked to these today, Jeff. This was so fun. Here's number one, which, of course, I think for anybody that had grown up probably in the late 70s, the 80s, or whatever, getting to see this story, this video from Apple about how Skywalker Sound Studios uses Macs. I'll let you introduce it.
Apple has a series of videos that they occasionally release called Behind the Mac, where they talk about how somebody uses a Mac to get their work done, whether it be a music professional or an engineer or something like that. But the one that they released this week on Star Wars Day, on May the 4th, be with you, was Skywalker Sound, which is the company that, of course, originally did the music. I mean, not the music, the sound effects for Star Wars, but they also do it for, so every other big movie,
Jurassic Park,
you name it,
Disney movies. Yeah.
So this fun video, about 15, 16 minutes, is great because they of course show how they're using the Macs to create the sounds. But the way that these folks create the sounds is so funny. They will often just go into real life and just record sounds and then change the speed and the tone and stuff like that to come up with something that sounds otherworldly. And it's fascinating because they have many scenes in the video where they will show a take with and without the sound effects. And there are some sound effects which are so iconic that you can just listen to a half a second and exactly what it is. The sound of the lightsaber, for example, or the sound of R2-D2. I mean, you only have to hear a fraction of a second.
The blaster.
And
the blaster sound.
What it is. You can identify the movie. Sometimes you can even remember the place in the movie that sound was used.
Exactly.
But then there are other sounds which are perhaps not as iconic, but they add to the overall movie that if you just listen to it without those sounds, even with the soundtrack, it's not the same. It's really not the same. You need to hear the the stormtroopers walking around, or the sound of the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. And so these people that make these sounds, what a fun, amazing job. And it's just delightful to watch these people explain how they do what they do and show off examples of the sounds.
So fun.
I love
it. Is 16 minutes worthwhile. I think this lady's name is Bonnie. I think I remember, just because she was so happy to be, she's a professional and she's so happy to have access. She's talking about she gets access to the original sound recordings, used in the original Star Wars movies. And she's just so giddy. It just makes me so happy as well. It's so fun.
Another guy in here he was at least the librarian at Skywalker Sound.
Yes.
They had like 750,000 different sounds.
Yes.
Just little snippets that he would come up with words to describe them so that they could find them and use them again in other movies and stuff like that. Again, I can't recommend it enough. Go ahead and watch this video. I'll stop talking.
Yeah.
Just go watch the video. You'll have fun.
Can I just tell you quickly? I remember, I don't know if I was in a theater. I might've been in somebody's house, the first Star Wars movie when I saw it. And I remember one of the main sounds that got me so happy was right before the Death Star shoots the laser. There's like a couple of beeps and boops, but I just remember I must have been in the theater because I think I may have wet my pants. I was so happy. It was there was this guy. It's not a stormtrooper. He was a pilot, but he pulled this lever down and it just went. Do you remember that?
Absolutely.
And then it shoots and I forget the planet. It's Adaran or it destroys the planet.
Sorry, yeah.
And I remember listening to that sound and I'm like, that is the coolest thing I have ever heard in my life. It's so memorable. And then I'll tell you quickly, the other one that I remember so well is in the Return of the Jedi, the little the speed bikes on Endor. Just that sound. Like I had never heard anything kind of do that. Anyway, so fun. And they talk about some of these things in there. We should just do a Star Wars podcast as well, maybe, Jeff. That's so fun. Okay, so that's one fun video. Here is another one. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick from one of my favorite tech people. I have followed her for years and years and years, iJustine, and she had an opportunity to go into the Apple Fitness Studios. And I can't tell you, Jeff, how happy this made me. I sent it to my wife and my daughter because we're always watching the same trainers in the same locations. And in some cases, because I am a little bit on the techie nerdy side, Jeff, I'm like, wow, that looks so professional. Like, how do they do the lighting on there? How do they, are they looking at the cameras or a timer going on, that the trainers can watch? This was amazing. I wish it could have done more behind the scenes, but it's Apple. They're not going to let her. But I remember she commented that she got to walk around. There were some scenes where she's even talking to a couple of the trainers, and she's like, the studio is immaculate. And she goes, as you would expect it to be. This was another fun video too. I'm glad you linked to it.
Yeah, for anyone watching the video right now, you just moved off of it, Brett, but you had sort of freeze framed on one of the scenes that was from the control room, where you can see all the different screens that they use. And I thought that one frame, which is iJustine doesn't even talk about it, but it's just, you can sort of get a sense of all the different angles that they have, and some of these are showing like how it would look on an iPhone, how it would look on an iPad. You can see the countdown timer that I'm sure that the fitness trainers are looking at, and that they can see what comes up next and stuff. But I agree. Apple's production value on its Fitness Plus videos is off the charts. It is incredible. And this gives you a little glimpse into how they make those look so fantastic. And, you know, a lot goes into those videos. And it's interesting to me that so much of them, maybe even all of them, are recorded in this one room, that they just sort of take different angles for it. You've got the wall that's got the rainbow. You've got the wall with the windows and the trees that they use for some of the cool down things. Yeah. It is. I guess there's something that's sort of personal about if you do regular workouts and you're seeing different people over and over again, you sort of feel like they become a part of their life, even though you don't know them and they don't know you from Adam. And Justine talks about that with some of the trainers.
She does.
Interesting it must be that they get feedback from people literally around the world, because this is someone that you invite into your home as you're doing your workouts and stuff. So it's a fun video. Again, my only regret is I wish you could have shown even more behind the scenes stuff. But I'm sure Apple.
Well, you have another good article too that you link to from the British GQ magazine. That's another good read on there. Yeah.
She mentioned in the video that, or one of the people from Apple mentioned in the video, that they were opening up the studios to a few people. Obviously, she was one of them. And this writer for British GQ is another one. These are the only two things that I've seen. But I wonder if Apple maybe opened it up to one or two other people, and maybe we'll see some more articles like this, maybe with different other snippets about behind the scenes.
I'm just going to point out quickly, iJustine in her video talks to, I think his name is Jay Blahnik. He is like the leader of Apple Fitness.
Yep.
And I didn't realize, Jeff, I know it's not been around that long, but Apple Fitness Plus launched in only December 2020. And he makes the comment in this video that obviously they've been planning Apple Fitness Plus for, years before the pandemic. But I hadn't put those pieces together about when the pandemic hit and the fact that they launched. And you mentioned it. You said it's just on a personal level, like you feel a personal connection with these trainers. And I have as well, in watching them, because you do invite them into your house. I've even done it on the road. I've taken my iPhone and done it from an iPhone because I get to know them. And it's like, I have trainers that I like and their styles. And she talks to a couple of the trainers here that, it makes it more real, I guess, in that sense. And I just hadn't realized the timing on that was so amazing for Apple Fitness Plus, that it happened in the middle of us in the pandemic, right in the middle of lockdown. But yet we all still wanted to be able to get out and move around, and to be fit in that way. And anyway, I think that was just, I hadn't put those pieces together as like why that's probably helping Apple Fitness Plus to be as successful as they are, but good for them. And they just keep on doing good stuff, I think, on this too.
Yeah, it's fun.
That's really neat.
Okay, why don't you let me introduce the next one, Brett?
Yes, you go ahead, because you put this here and I didn't.
Never. I'm sure that everybody listening to this remembers like it was yesterday, episode number 9 from July of last year, where your in the know tip was using an iPhone as a remote control.
Okay, let me pull this up then. Yeah.
When you were doing a presentation from your Mac.
You're running
Keynote on the Mac, and it's hooked up to a projector, and you were telling me and everybody else about how you could walk around and using an iPhone. And one of the things I told you was that I don't really have a portable Mac. I just have an iMac at home. Whenever I do presentations out and about, I use my iPad. I use Keynote on my iPad. And you told me that you thought that the iPhone could be used as a remote for the iPhone. And in the last 10 seconds of the podcast, because I listened to it last night, you said, you got us to report back and see how it works. And I said, will do. So here we are. Okay. It took me a while.
Episode 9. Wow.
The reality is, though, although I do presentations with some regularity, throughout the pandemic, they have all been on Zoom or Microsoft Teams or something like that. The first time that I did an in-person presentation with a big group of people was just this past week, when a bunch of the associates at my law firm were together, and I was doing a presentation for them, actually about some of the same things you and I talked about at the beginning of today's podcast, technology threats. I was giving them tips on avoiding things like phishing and password security and stuff like that. But just because of the way that the room was set up, there was a podium in the corner where the cords were, and I put my iPad there, but I didn't want to stand behind a podium in the corner of the room. I wanted to be in the front of the room with a big screen behind me and walking around, and I could sort of point to things on the screen. And so I remembered this tip that you had shared way back when. So I hooked up my iPhone to the iPad. It was so easy. I mean, I just opened up the Keynote app on my iPhone, told my iPhone to connect to my iPad, and
you gotta link them.
Linked them. And then once I did that, it was just great. So I was walking around, talking, doing the presentation. And as you yourself said last year, I could glance at my iPhone and I could see what the next slide was which would help me with my transitions. I could see the timer, so I could, make sure that I was in my presentation on time. And it was seamless. It was so nice. Part of me wished that I had, it's one of the rare times in my life that I would have enjoyed having a smaller iPhone, like an iPhone mini, because that would have been just a little bit, I mean, not that my iPhone is too big for my hands, but it would have been just a little bit nicer if it was a tiny bit smaller, but it worked great. And it was just amazing to me. I haven't had a reason for this. I guess in the past, when I've done presentations, I've often had my iPad had been right there in the middle of the room with me, not off to the side. So it was easy enough for me to tap the screen. So anyway, I know it's been a long time coming, but if you also do a presentation from your iPad, definitely, take up Brett's tip from last year, because it works fantastically, and I look forward to using it again. It was great.
I'm so glad. In fact, last weekend when I was out, I was doing a workshop with some folks, and this is one of the tips that I shared with them, because again, it works better. I mean, it's sort of designed for like having a laptop on a podium somewhere or on a table somewhere, right? But it can absolutely work with an iPad. And in some cases, if your iPad has to be connected with a wire connection, with a wired connection, right? Like you have to plug in a USB hub on my iPad and I have an HDMI cable coming to that.
That's what I have.
That is going to be, okay, perfect. That is going to be a little bit more reliable, right? Without having the wireless. I love doing wireless presentations directly from my iPad, but the fact that I can do that from the iPhone and have the iPad sitting in a corner somewhere, because the cable isn't too long, and I certainly don't want to carry my iPad around with a big dongle, hanging off of it, and a USB-C hub. But I'm so glad that it worked. And you can even use you can use a laser pointer on the iPhone on the slides that way, because it wirelessly goes through the iPad, and you can even annotate slides. I'm so happy that worked.
But I saw that you could do that. Yeah.
I know, and I don't usually use that either. But in some cases, you have that capability. You can do that. But I'm so glad that it worked, because you can see the next slides. And in fact, one last tip on that. Well, on the iPhone, you can slide from the left edge. Okay, good. You did this. And you can see all your slides.
Yeah, I
because you know where you're going to go.
And mine were in the right order. But if I had needed to jump back 5 or 6 slides, I could use that tip and I could jump back and jump forward. So although I didn't need it, it's great that was there. So fantastic.
Thanks for reporting back after all of these months, Jeff. That's good, man. It's like we've already started the end to know section here with a great tip on that. But let me just add another quick tip. I will tell you, I did recently upgrade my iPad to a 12.9-inch iPad Pro, but I also wanted to upgrade my lovely wife's iPad. She had been using an older iPad, and it was pretty much her primary computer. But I upgraded her to an iPad Air 5th generation. Mostly based on your recommendation, Jeff, because it was perfect for what she needed. But the iPad Air does not use Face ID. It does have an M1 chip in it, which was great, and it's been wonderful for her. But the iPad Air still uses Touch ID. But the iPad Air does not have a round home button like what we all used to have on the iPhones, right? The Touch ID is actually built into the power button, or the on-off button, that is located, depending on how you are holding the iPad, either on the side, in landscape mode, or on the very top if you're in portrait mode. And so I just wanted to remind everybody, first and foremost, I always say this, even using Face ID or Touch ID on an iPhone or an iPad is not a substitute for having a passcode, right? You always still have to have a passcode on your device, which is great. This is additional security. The Face ID or the Touch ID just works on top of the passcode. So just always know that you are still going to have to use a passcode and know your passcode on your devices. And so as my wife was setting up her new iPad Air, she had to put in a passcode. which was fine. But then she needed to do Touch ID. Now, my wife sometimes will use the iPad in landscape mode, right, Jeff? So the best finger that she was using to unlock through Touch ID for the button, at this case, the button was on the top left corner of the iPad. So she uses her left index finger in that mode. But in sometimes she's using the iPad in portrait mode, which means then that the on-off button is in the top right corner of the iPad. And it's kind of hard to use your left index finger when you're holding the iPad in a portrait mode. So now she uses her right index finger. So I know I'm explaining this a whole lot, but the tip is know that you can have multiple fingers on Touch ID. And Apple will allow you to use multiple fingers. And so in my case, I was telling my wife, you can use multiple fingers. So whichever way that you're, whatever orientation you're holding the iPad in at the time, you can use whatever finger is going to be a little bit easier to access there. And it's very easy to do. You can go to settings and go into Touch ID. I think typically when you set up the iPad Air, it only asks for one finger. But after the fact, you can go into settings, go to Touch ID and passcode, the section there, and then you can add additional fingers. And by the way, even this iMore article that I'll link to here, that they even suggest, you can actually, in some cases, put a family member's fingerprint on there. That could be like a safety measure, right? That somebody else could access that. Or they even said as you're, traveling with someone, maybe temporarily, you could maybe, put a kid's Touch ID on there if you want them to be able to access games or whatever while you're traveling, that kind of a thing. You can always go in and add fingers, remove different fingers from the Touch ID. And you can also, by the way, rename whatever finger. So you can remember, like, this is my left index finger, right? Or whatever name you want to put on there. You can rename that by going into the Touch ID. So a few Touch ID tips on there, but just because my wife just got the iPad Air. Typically when I had an iPhone, Jeff, I only had like my thumb, right? Because I was always holding the iPhone in the same way. I didn't typically have to add additional fingers. I think I did when it first came out. But on the iPad Air, it's again, because because you're holding the iPad in different orientations in some cases, you might certainly want to go in and add some additional fingers to Touch ID.
Yeah. And using somebody else's fingers is nice too. My wife's has a MacBook. My wife has a MacBook Pro with Touch ID, and one of the 5 fingers is mine because sometimes I'll go in there. I mean, for example, nice. Just this week, the new version of 1Password came out, 1Password 8, and I told her that I would install it on her computer this weekend.
You wanted to upgrade
because
it.
I have a finger, I can do that easily. Right. My daughter has an iPhone SE, same thing. I have a finger in there, so I can jump on her iPhone if I have to do an update or something like that. So nice tip.
Good
tip. So my tip has to do with messages. So sometimes you'll be having some sort of a text message conversation, and somebody will say something in a message, and you want to copy part of that and paste it somewhere else. Maybe one person texts you some information, you want to paste it to someone else. The way that you can do it normally is if you hold down on a text bubble, a pop-up menu will show up, and one of your selections is copy. And that works. It will copy the text, but it copies all of the text. And there may be 3 sentences there, but you only wanted to copy like one of those 3 sentences. There's no way to copy just some of the words. This week, I was listening to another podcast, the Connected Podcast, number 396. And they had a tip that had never even occurred to me that you could do this, which is when you're in your Messages app, do a screenshot, just hold down the buttons to take a stop machine, and then instantly you will see the image of the screen right there. And because of the live text technology, which Apple came out with last year, that it automatically reads the words. Once you have that image on the screen, just immediately from right there, just take your finger and just swipe across the words in the text message. So if you just want that middle of the 3 sentences, just swipe across the middle sentences and it will select the text, and then you can just copy it. And it takes a second to do this, and then you have copied just the part of the text message that you want, and you can go paste it somewhere else. I'm like, what a fantastic idea! That's great. It's a bit of a hack because you're using a screenshot, and you're using live text, but it works. And I thought it was going to be a lot slower to do. It's really not. It's really fast. So the next time that you want to copy just a snippet of what somebody has in another text message, I recommend that you do it this way, because the alternative is you copy all the text and you paste it, and then you got to delete the part that you don't want.
I've done that.
Then you got to delete the end part that you don't want.
Right.
It is much better. So I was thrilled to learn it this week, and I want to share the love and let others know about it.
Thank you for sharing that love, Jeff. That is a cool quick workaround, because if you do a screenshot, it goes into the bottom left corner there, right? And you can either swipe it away, but if you tap it, that's exactly what I did. It goes right up, and now I can select the text on there.
Copy it.
And that is doable because of that live text feature, which is always working on any photos that you do on there. Oh, that is cool. That's like 2 or 3 tips, kind of scrunched together. I love that. Fantastic. So fun, my friend. Thank you. Congratulations on 50 episodes. Wow. It just seems like yesterday. But this is so fun. I'm so happy to be doing this with you, Jeff. And we'll talk to you next week then. We'll keep it going.
We'll keep it going. Sounds great. Bye-bye, Brett. Bye-bye, everybody.